If you have ever walked through the Narragansett Elementary School, you may have noticed a mural installed and painted over a 106-foot section of cement block wall. Some art aficionados would immediately be able to name the artist who created this festival of color and animals. Others walk by it every day and don't realize that it is a major piece of art by a significant artist who happened to live in Maine. Dahlov Ipcar is best known for her colorful paintings featuring all types of animals. She was an author and illustrator of children's books. She also created in other mediums, such as fabric collages, hooked rugs, needlepoint tapestries, and unique soft sculptures. In 1939, at the age of 21, she had her first solo exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, called Creative Growth. It showcased her work as a child transitioning into her first mature works. She was the first woman and the youngest artist to be featured in a solo exhibition at the museum. Dahlov Ipcar was born November 12, 1917, in Vermont, but grew up in Greenwich Village in New York City. Her parents, William and Marguerite Zorak, artists in their own right, encouraged her to paint at a young age and surrounded her with bohemian influences. She attended Oberlin College for a brief period, but found that formal instruction limited her artistic sensibilities. At the age of 18, she married Adolf Ipcar. A year later, they moved to Maine permanently, where they lived on Robin Hood Farm, part of the Zoraks' property on Georgetown Island in Maine.
Hi, I'm Peggy Marchand, and this is my friend Linda Webb.
Hello.
And we've been friends since forever. Linda and I met because our kids were in the same class at Narragansett School. They met in first grade, and so did we, I guess. So anyway, we got curious about how these murals at Narragansett School came to be. And of course, because our kids had fallen in love with the murals, we had too. So I had this idea, and I wrote a letter to Dahlov Ipcar, and I asked her if we could come to her studio and talk to her about her art and the murals and its impact on kids. So I put my letter in the mail and then waited, and eventually I got a letter back saying, "Oh yes, please do come." You know what? If we're going to go to see her, I wonder if she'd like us to take pictures. But then we went ping and had a big idea. A friend of ours, friends in Gorham, had a brand new movie camera. We'd never touched one. We never picked one up. We had no clue how to use it. But I called, and they were perfectly willing to loan it. So in my kitchen, we played with the zoom lens. We played with the on and off buttons. We thought about the volume. And deciding we were professional enough, off we went to Robin Hood Cove, and our meeting with Dahlov.
So my job in this adventure was to film it, and I do like taking pictures. I've always been an amateur photographer for myself, but I had never done any video. And this was a pretty short learning curve because I believe we got the video camera very soon before we left to go and visit Dahlov. So there was a lot of pressure to, the thing I remember most was to hold the camera still so that it wouldn't be jiggling when the film came out, and to keep it clear. And whether I did that well enough or not is up for debate. But I did feel pressure while we were there, and I was doing the filming.
She was nervous about the work of the photography. I was a wreck about, well, I had some questions from the kids. I had my own questions, but I had never really done an interview before either. So the two of us drove past her house when we got up to Robin Hood Cove, and we went out of the car. It was kind of a damp, rainy-ish day. We were just like kids having a report. We were nervous and not sure of how things were going to go. And then we had to gird our loins, get in the car, and just drive up her driveway and do it. So we did.
And as I reviewed the original video earlier today, I was impressed with how easy she was to talk to. She would be asked a question by Peg, and she would elaborate and reminisce and came up with really good, interesting answers. So it wasn't like it was difficult to draw her out.
She'd clearly done it before, even if we hadn't. And she really did make us feel at ease.
Well, when I was about 16, my husband laughed because he said I used to stand around and say, I don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up, and he thought it was sort of obvious I was going to be an artist. But I had a lot of ideas, you know. I thought I might like to be work in natural history, or be, you know, or at a museum, or go out in the field and study, you know, be a naturalist, or I might. I was interested in the theater, and he said I even considered politics. I said, well, that would be hopeless because I couldn't remember names.
How did you learn to paint? How did you know you could be an artist?
Well, my parents were both artists, and I don't think I ever really learned, except that I, you know, just naturally picked up a pencil like most children do, and a crayon and a paintbrush, and they just said, go to it, and encouraged me. And I thought that was a part of life, just painting and doing things. Making pictures was just a part of life that everybody would have in their lives. And but I did realize, of course, that all the other children in the school weren't as able to draw as I was. But I think maybe it's because I started so early. I got a little jump on them. And then when I was around 9 or 10, I didn't think I was doing things that were good enough. I didn't think they were realistic enough. And then when I got to 13, I decided that didn't matter. And I had sort of a poetic ideas that I'd express in, but always through natural forms, you know, through animals, through people.
How did you get so intrigued with animals?
Well, that's a good question. I think I just may have been born with it because I've been intrigued with animals all my life, and I think most children relate well to animals. But as they grow up, people have less apt to maintain their interest. But I've always sort of just loved every kind of variety of animals. Well, I paint a lot of Africa scenes because they have so many beautiful animals, and you don't get the variety in America. We have the big plains, but they don't have, you know, all that abundance of form and color.
Did you ever go to Africa?
No, somebody asked me that, and they said, well, you don't have to go. I do better, really, when I do things through my imagination. When I try to memorize visually. I used to visit a lot of zoos, and I used to visit natural history museums. Now I watch movies and try to remember what I see. And that sort of frees me, rather than, you know, if you work from photographs, it all looks sort of frozen and stiff. But if you do it from your own memory, you can put more life into it. But I think you learn by doing it. And I didn't go to art school, but there were art teachers in our high schools. And most of the time, I sort of would rather go my own way than be instructed when it came to art. I learned that there are certain ways you have feelings about what you're doing, and this is the important thing, expressing your feelings and through color and form.
Narragansett School opened in 1981. A Maine law from 1979, called Percent for Art, requires that at least 1% of the budget for construction or renovation costs of buildings, funded through taxpayer dollars, must be used to acquire works of art to be displayed at that location.
How did you get to do the mural at Narragansett School? How did that happen?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but I had done the one for Kingfield. The architect first, who was first got in touch with me, hadn't seen the library mural, and he wanted me to do a mural for Sun Savings. And so I did that one, and then he suggested a Kingfield mural, and I did that, and somehow Allied Engineering that was doing the Narragansett School heard about it. I don't know if they heard about it through him or not, but they got in touch with me and asked if I'd like to do a mural. So I was working with them on the plans for it, and there was a committee, I guess, too, that I submitted several ideas, and the one they chose is the one you have.
I talked to one of the ladies who had been on the art section of the building committee, and she said it was very exciting came down there and watched, and just to watch the mural evolve.
I remember it was really fun because the building was still being built when I started doing it, and they were these workmen clanking around up on metal stilts, putting in the ceiling fixtures and the lighting and the masonry drills going, and they'd be tramping up and down the halls, and they'd look at me and they'd say, one would say, "That's good work," and another one would say, "That's not good work, that's great work." And then they'd say to me, "Do you do vans?"
What did you reply?
I said, "I never have." And it never occurred to me that this is one of the things that people want painters to paint these days. But it was fun.
When you're starting a mural, where in the world do you begin? How does it end up?
Well, I
Finished.
of course I had a sketch for this, and I underpainted the big triangles, which they said looked like teepees. I said, those are trees. They're pine trees. Square. You need some kind of a background that'll pull it all together, and that's why I had the lines for the farmyard and the waves on the ocean side. All the animals in Maine that I could fit in.
I just want to ask a few questions about the mural, and then we can turn that off. So you began the mural by doing the big, the trees and the outlines.
Yeah, I did the whole woodland section first.
Mm-hmm.
Then I did the farm section, and then the sea section. But I had it pretty well planned out.
Was this
And
planned on
I
paper or in your
Well,
mind?
In my mind. Well, I had some little sketches, very small. I know which animal's going where.
Mhm.
And then when it comes to painting the animals, I remember the guy standing there saying, "Gee, she's doing it freehand." It was just, I just start to do a deer, and the deer goes on, and one thing about that surface, it wasn't very easy to correct it. You had to get it right the first time because it's a rough surface and you couldn't wipe out.
Well, that
Yeah.
was one of the questions that
Yeah.
one of the children asked me is
Then I
made any mistakes.
I began to make some outlines with chalk just because I was afraid I'd, end up all wrong. But what I find that the thing that surprises me, is it's no harder to do a 9-foot deer than to do a 9-inch deer, because as long as you know the form, it just expands it, and you do it with bigger brushes, and it hardly takes longer. And but I don't know. You better be pretty able to just do it. Your hand has to be able to do what your eye wants it to, what your mind wants it to, and that's what takes practice, is getting your hand trained for some strange reason.
Your eye already knows how to do it in your mind.
Well, your eye needs training too. I remember when I was 9 or 10, I'd look at what I did and it would look perfect, and a few years later I'd say, how could I do a horse that's got a long body like that and short legs like that, and it looked real to me. But your eye keeps changing, and this is one thing when you're teaching children you should remember, is that they see what they see that they've drawn is as realistic to them as what you see in a professional artist has done later. They don't see it looking funny the way it does to you as a grown-up.
That's a good point.
It's hard to believe, but that's true.
Yeah. One of the things that the kids at Narragansett School are really interested in is in the sea section. They like to look at the shark. How did you get the idea for turning that bumper on the wall into a shark's eye?
Well, the bumpers bothered me, and I kept trying to think of what to do with them, and I guess the shark's eye just worked out. That was the most successful. The other was a snail. Down at the other end, I didn't quite figure out anything. The shark side was a natural, it just happened.
I think at the other end you have a bird resting on a,
Yeah, the bird
On
sits on
something.
one of the knobs.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
then there's the owl. There's the owl on the other knob at the other end.
I think he might be. Yeah.
You know, just down where the door, they're really door bumpers is what they are.
What kind of paint do you use?
Well, in this case, it was indoor-outdoor enamel on semi-gloss surface, which works fine when you're doing it right directly on the wall. And I realized that would last because I first did it in pictures like that in my own bathroom, and it's held up in the bathroom, so I figured it'd last forever. As long as the wall lasts, it'll last.
Dahlov wrote and illustrated more than 30 children's books. On a visit to a library, you are more than likely to see some of her work in the children's section. Some books were inspired by her life on the farm, and others derived from the fanciful imagination of her mind.
Tell us a little bit about being an artist, but also being a writer of a children's book. How did you start writing children's books?
Well, we'd come up here to Maine to farm after I got married. I got married at 18, dropped out of college. I was there 1 year. And we came up here because we just thought we'd like to see what it was like to spend a year in Maine, and then we never went back. And first we had a cow, 2 cows and a horse, a work horse, and a riding horse, and chickens, pigs, and just about everything except sheep. I never had sheep, and a big garden. And we just were sort of getting by on the farm. And then one of my ex-teachers who had known me when I was 12 years old from my first progressive grade school was working for a publisher, and she asked me if I'd like to illustrate a book. And that was the first book I illustrated, which was called The Little Fisherman by Margaret Wise Brown. And then I illustrated 2 more books, and then I began to write my own. And since I've been writing my own, I haven't illustrated for anybody else. For a while I was doing 2 books a year. Now I don't do, I did one last year, the Christmas, my wonderful Christmas tree. But I haven't, that was the first one I'd done since 1981. I find it bothers my back to do the work now of the illustrating.
Standing at an easel, or?
Well, no, what was hard was I had to separate the colors, and I have a light table, and you lean over and you put one plastic plate on top of another and trace and do ink, make the match.
That was a question we had.
And that was very hard. That was hard work. I enjoyed doing it, but as I said, it begins to bother my back.
Most of us don't know how a picture gets to be a picture in a book.
Yeah.
And I guess there's someone.
Well, it's I don't know if your kids have ever done colored block prints, but you make 1 block for each color, and this is what I made, 1 black ink drawing for each color, and there'd be about 3 to 4 colors, and you can overlap them and get, if you overlap pink and yellow, you get orange, and if you overlap blue and yellow, you get green. So you get out of 3 colors plus black, you get all the colors there are.
Oh, I see.
And that some of the books look like they're natural, free, full color books. The Christmas tree was printed full. They call it full color when it's done photographically. But it's cheaper to have the artist do it. That's why the publishers like you to do it, me to do it. But it's funny. It used to be that printing and photography, all these things were less expensive than handwork, and now they're more expensive than handwork.
No, I was curious about that because I had no idea
Yeah.
what this process was.
I've done about 30 books, and I enjoyed it.
Of all your books, do you have one that you're especially fond of?
Well, there's several. I don't know. You like them all. I like them all for different reasons. It's like like trying to choose which of your children you like this. You really can't. I like the Calico Jungle because that was one of the ones that has influenced my painting later. I do much more designs and color, bright colors and different patterns in my backgrounds and then my animals now than I did originally. And I like Brown Cow Farm. That was sort of really our life we lived here with the cows and the farm, and One Horse Farm was our life here too. And I like sort of some of a book like I Love My Anteater was a lot of fun. That was an alphabet book.
Did you ever get frustrated?
Well, yes, everybody does. There are times when you're struggling to do something and it doesn't come out right. And I remember I'd get in rages and tear things up and cry. But you don't give up. You go out, you come back and you start over and you find you maybe it doesn't come out exactly the way you want, but sometimes it keeps surprising you, but the things that are in your head are sort of so different from the things you think you're going to do. You're surprised at what comes out, and that's really what makes it exciting.
So sometimes it's a surprise.
Yeah. Often when I'm painting now, I start with the merest little sort of thumbnail sketch, you call it. It's just a little scribble and I just start putting the colors on the canvas, and I won't really know what I'm going to do. And I'll just put an animal inside. I'll put an animal in one place, and then I'll put an animal in another place, and then the whole thing begins to sort of come together. And it's all somewhere inside you. So that's the sort of fun of it, is seeing what comes out.
Dahlov would continue to create throughout her long life, even when struggling with macular degeneration in her later years. She died in 2017 at the age of 99. Her art influence has traveled far and wide and inspired many other artists. What a colorful, imaginative, and hardworking life she led.